Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to your daily sit rep for Wednesday, the 1st of October, 2025. I'm your host, Mike Shelby. With that, good morning to Robert. Let's go ahead and jump inside the Beltway. Starting with, let's actually go ahead and start talking about the shutdown. So it's official. The federal government's shut down. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then there's this meeting, and I saw this picture, and it gave me a chuckle. Apparently, President Trump gave some Trump 2028 hats to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. They were not pleased. I guess by now everyone saw the mariachi memes and videos as well. Also, they were not very happy about that. If you haven't seen those, hop on X. They were everywhere last night. At any rate, Robert, do you have any updates on how long this might last and what's next?
I think it's likely to last longer than possibly at least the rest of this week, because right now both Republicans and Democrats are digging in even further for the fight over who's going to take blame for this shutdown. And I think both sides still likely believe that they're going to win that public relations fight. My Majority Leader John Thune is planning to continue holding votes on that stopgap bill. And last night, before they failed at 8 p.m., they did get two Democrats and one independent, Angus King, who caucuses with the Democrats, to come across the aisle and vote for the bill. They also lost one Republican, Rand Paul. But they only need 8 total Democrats to come across the aisle, so 5 more. And then while the shutdown's going on, the Trump administration has been maneuvering to keep some things basically continuing, including immigration enforcement and tariffs. And it looks like they're also trying to use the shutdown to attempt to clear out of a lot of the federal bureaucracy, because I think J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, late last night or early this morning, said something like walked back that reduction in force memo a little bit, but as far as I understand, that has still gone out, and there's still a push inside of the White House to basically force the federal agencies that are being furloughed to start permanently firing federal employees.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's probably the biggest news of the morning. Thanks for that, Robert. And let's go ahead and continue on through the domestic sit rep here. All right. What's this internet privacy bill?
So this was a bill that was passed by unanimous consent in the Senate very quietly Monday, and it allows lawmakers to take in their families and their staff to request that their private information be removed from websites, including social media. And this is part of a bill that's also going to allow federal judges to do the same. I did see there was some pushback from free speech groups saying that this would amount to censorship, that in cases where the media is following lawmakers and recording them while they're traveling and stuff like that, this law could be used to take down that newsworthy content. And then yesterday, the TSA also asked the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to investigate allegations that the Biden-era TSA officials were politicizing the Quiet Skies travel watch list. And this was after the announcement of an internal investigation where they fired 5 senior officials who they said were adding people to this Quiet Skies travel watch list over political reasons. Which includes, I believe, Thomas Massey and current Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. And then moving over to the domestic side, the SIM card network that was dismantled by the U.S. Secret Service last week that we reported on, it was apparently larger than initially reported, and authorities said they found an additional 200,000 SIM cards at locations in New Jersey. They're now trying to track down who's connected to these properties where the SIM card servers were installed. And law enforcement sources said that the investigation began after high-profile people, including at least one with direct access to President Donald Trump, received threats on their private phones. And I think this now 300,000 SIM cards found in this investigation is probably just the tip of the iceberg. And I imagine these are going to be found across the country. Because the threat here was that these SIM card servers could be used to conduct what amounts to a distributed denial of service attack on telecom networks. But these also apparently function as a clandestine telecom network for organized crime and foreign governments.
Hey, Robert, first of all, thanks for that. Second of all, let's just maybe connect 2 data points. I don't even know if they are connected. But when you say basically it's a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service attack against the telecoms, it's like when you go to a really big football game and you have problems texting people because there's just massive amounts of traffic on these cell towers, and the cell towers can't handle them all. That's basically what these SIM card server farms would be doing, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. All right. We've heard a lot of talk about Sarah Adams, and it's every so often she's on another podcast, and I see it blow up on social media. And she and others on her team and in her realm have been talking about this 9/11 2.0 thing for a while, saying it's coming. And apparently, the last thing that I have seen is that they've started to put a timeline on this. And what is it, like November? It's either later this year or into like February next year, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what I've seen. So far, FBI, other people, they're not saying who is responsible. It seems to me like it's nation state connected, these SIM card servers, and maybe some nexus with organized crime. Is that basically what they're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So would you say this is more likely or less likely to be a part of some Al-Qaeda plot? Because if you want to tie up emergency services, one really great way to do that to slow down their response is to make sure they can't communicate via cellular networks.
I'm not sure, because I think the clandestine telecom network angle is possibly just a secondary use or secondary purpose of this, just to basically make money while whoever has installed these server farms waits for whatever opportunity they have to actually shut down telecom networks. The Secret Service is saying that that was the primary purpose, is this threat to the telecom networks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So probably not connected, but a topic of consideration for sure. All right, let's move on to these drug tariffs taking effect today.
Yeah, so today, these 100% tariffs on patented and branded drugs being imported to the United States are supposed to take effect. This is not going to impact generic drugs, which are exempt from these tariffs, and also any U.S. drug makers who are currently building U.S. production facilities are going to be exempt from these tariffs. So it's not clear yet which exact drugs are actually going to be impacted. I think there are some people within the pharma industry that are trying to figure out who specifically is going to be impacted by this, and what the administration means by having production facilities under construction. And then the Trump White House announced yesterday that they did make a deal with one of these drug makers, Pfizer. And according to this deal that the White House published on their website, Americans are going to receive comparable prices on drugs to those offered in other countries. And some of the drugs are going to be slashed. The prices are going to be slashed by 85% as part of this deal for Pfizer to avoid these 100% pharma tariffs. And they're also going to be required to repatriate any increase in revenue from drug sales overseas, which I think is actually an important point here, because this is the White House basically forcing a pharma multinational to bring revenue here to be taxed. And then also part of this plan is going to be a government website where Americans can buy these drugs directly from Pfizer.
Mm-hmm. All right. Craig says, I believe on the topic of those SIM cards, they haven't arrested anyone or even announced a suspect. Well, listen, you can look at those server racks and they've got fingerprints all over them for sure. So I don't know who set them up, but they're going to be taking latent prints off there. Very likely they have a list of suspects based on that alone. I'm sure they'll find trace DNA. There's going to be obviously a multimodal biometric search for whoever knows about this. Not that the person who set this up is necessarily the one running it, but I'd imagine the FBI. And this is what, in New Jersey, correct?
New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, I believe.
Okay. So lots of cameras in those places as well. I imagine they have a pretty good understanding, but I could be way off base. Maybe a little too optimistic. All right. Last thing here, since we brought her up, what are your spidey senses on Sarah Adams? Is she the real deal? I don't know whether she is or not, but listen, I would just, her claim of this 9/11 2.0, and I think she said on the Sean Ryan show, she's been on there, like I've listened to all those podcasts. I think it's like 8 hours of podcasts. I listened to them. She was convincing. She sure seemed like an analyst to me. She knew the ins and outs and the history and the people and the places and the times and the meetings and all that stuff. Like pretty much things you would expect an intelligence analyst to say. So I look at this and I just FACT. It's something that a little heuristic that I developed in 2008, because when you have a piece of information and you don't know whether it's true or not, I mean, this is for us, this would be single source information. This is Sarah Adams saying, and I know there's a couple other people who jumped on this bandwagon as well, but I think honestly, a lot of that's probably circular reporting. They're just the bandwagon writers are just reiterating what Sarah Adams and other people have said, the other people on her team. However, FACT, is it feasible that there are, what you say, Robert, 1,000 Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, insert Islamic terror group here, members in the United States?
Correct.
Okay. Is that feasible? Of course, considering our open border for 4 years. Is it appropriate for Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State to be plotting a 9/11 2.0, something that's more catastrophic than 9/11? I would say yes, that is appropriate for them to do. Is it consistent with what we know? Is it consistent with previous reporting that Al-Qaeda continues to try to plan attacks against Westerners in the United States? Yeah, that's consistent. And then finally, is it timely? Like, why now? Why not now? I don't know exactly what the reasoning is for, what is it, November, December to February 26 timeframe or something like that. So nothing about that strikes me as odd in any way in terms of timing. So I think this is I don't know if it's credible because I haven't seen the sources, and of course they're not going to share that stuff. But I would take it seriously. I do take it seriously. I think people should take it seriously because it's more likely than not there's at least some element of truth to this, and I think people should be considering that and making plans for that as part of your contingency planning. Honestly, Robert, do you have anything to add there?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for all that then, Robert. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our global sit rep. Jared, good morning. All right. So it was last month, or maybe even back in August, I said Venezuela is officially on regime change watch. And now apparently some Trump advisors are maybe even pushing for regime change within the administration. What's the latest?
Yes, I do want to make sure that we frame this correctly. This is anonymous U.S. officials talking to the New York Times about this information. So,
okay. All right.
Yes. That said, if it is real, this is a significant change. Now, supposedly the three in the inner circle here are Marco Rubio, CIA Director Ratcliffe, and Stephen Miller. And what the article says is that they frequently advocate for Trump to just remove Nicolas Maduro from power in Venezuela, and that there are two senior Venezuelan, basically exiled officials that are in contact with the Trump administration, one of them being Pedro Uruchutu. Sorry. His name's in the report. He's a former Venezuelan presidential candidate, and he claims to actually have a post-Maduro plan for Venezuela. So the first 100 days, here's what this would look like. Anytime I hear anonymous sources speaking to the New York Times or any legacy media, it sets the hairs on the back of my neck up. And Stephen Miller is a weird one to call out. His whole thing has been immigration, not even really external. Not to say they're not tied, just I have a lot of questions about the veracity of this, but it's too important to skip.
Sure. All right. So we'll throw that up as possible. But are there any changes to that Caribbean Navy and U.S. Coast Guard presence?
No, I saw that the Samson got back underway. They were the destroyer that was rotated out. We may be looking at a much more frequent rotation now just because it's so close to everybody else. And I've seen screenshots of potential callouts for shipyards from Naval NAVSUP Fleet Support Center Jackson down in the Caribbean, but I haven't been able to verify those screenshots. So I am trying to keep a lookout to see, okay, how permanent are we trying to make this? And we've heard the rumors about, oh, we might stand Roosevelt Roads back up, and they're at least using the airfield there. It all fits.
That's that Roosevelt Naval Facilities on Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that all fits within the idea of Fortress North America and the entire strategy that we've laid out since the Trump administration won the election. I want to verify the information before we say, hey, this is going into our operational picture here.
Sure. All right. So it's at least counter drug, and it could develop, that presence could develop into something more. All right. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on. Speaking of naval bases, let's head over to Philippines?
Yes. This is, so the Pentagon awarded a $975,000 contract, which admittedly for defense is like nothing, or I guess war now is basically nothing, but that goes off much farther away in the Philippines. And we're talking about a small boat facility. So it's basically $1 million small boat maintenance facility. That is big. And this is upgrading the Philippine Navy's Naval Detachment Oyster Bay over in West Palawan, which you can see here marked on the southern half of the map. That this is the support facility for small boats throughout the entire South China Sea for the Philippines. So this is a major upgrade. They're also going to use a New Mexico-based contractor, so you will actually see American jobs fulfilling a defense role in the Philippines. That's, I think, an important note, at least for us here on the flip side. And then over in the Mediterranean, this is more or less a closeout item. The Italians and Spanish removed their naval support from the Global Sumud Flotilla. That's the flotilla that Greta Thunberg's on, trying to break the Israeli blockade on Gaza and bring humanitarian aid. Israel reports that they also have not seen the Turkish drone Overwatch return in a day, so they suspect that's also done. The flotilla claims that they've already had a run-in with the Israeli Navy that intercepted them last night. That was as of this morning. And that the Israeli Navy had conducted a cyber attack, which damaged their navigation capabilities. I think it was EA, not cyber, but that's neither here nor there. I think the flotilla is about to end. The last time they had one of these, the Israeli Navy stepped in, arrested everybody without incident, and then just deported them back to their home country. That's probably going to happen here. Unless something big happens, I'm not going to report on this anymore. Just we're closing it out.
All right.
And then lastly, the Warsaw Security Forum is still ongoing, and former chair of the NATO Military Committee, Rob Bauer, said that Europe has become far too dependent on China. This is something we've been saying for a while, but it's good to hear from a at least former official, and he still has plenty of sway there. Now, Bauer pointed to Europe's high use of renewable energy, that Europe gets all the raw materials, his words, for producing that energy from China, which Xi could cut off in the event of a war, and basically bring Europe's entire manufacturing base to a standstill. Bauer also called on Europe to stop being naive and that it should go after its own interests now. So really, stepping up into the role it has historically filled of a major power player.
Mm-hmm. Jared, would Chinese President Xi necessarily have to cut off raw materials exports to Europe? Because it kind of seems to me like you're not going to be able to get them out of port if there's an actual war here.
I think,
or get insurance for your tankers or container ships or bulk carriers either.
Yeah. Specifically for the raw materials, considering that these would be relatively low quantities, you could probably still do an airlift from China to Europe for it. So maybe there would be a bit more play there. But regardless, he could officially say, hey, we're cutting off. You will get nothing, even if we get our ships out. And they're going to keep trying to get their ships out anyway. Sure. And that would be an economic response to what we here at Forward Observer have said. Europe is probably going to play an economic role much more than a military role. It would be like for like, and it would match.
Mm. Okay. All right. So another breakdown in global supply chains for sure. All right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jared. Let's go ahead and move on. 76 protests today, a bit above baseline. And on this topic, next slide, Jared. Because of the stuff that Sarah Adams talks about, and, we've been over on the high side for members only. We've been maintaining visibility on the color revolution and showing you how it is progressing. I mean, it's literally week over week. 2 weeks ago, they said, expect escalation in the quote unquote months ahead. I think the same week or maybe the week after that, they said they were picking a color for their color or they don't call it a color revolution, not yet. They call it a protest movement, or they started off calling it a protest movement. Now they're talking about organized resistance, which I laid out back in November of last year, exactly how this would play out. So we are seeing this transition from national protest movement to national organized resistance movement, which means a lot more disruption, a lot more turning up the heat, the political and social temperature in this country. Frankly, you need to be able to run local intelligence. So coming up on Thursday, the 9th of October at 7 p.m. Central, I'm going to teach you how to run a 2 or 3 man intel cell. And if you're just by yourself, you're going to be busy, but I'll show you how to do this with one person as well. This is very important because if we do get into a war with China at some point in 26, 27, 28, whenever that window is, we have a national crisis surrounding maybe the 26 midterms or maybe the 28 presidential election, or we have some other catastrophic emergency, or maybe it's just a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake that affects you locally, or a chemical spill or something, any number of things that could happen locally. Your survivability depends on your access to information and your ability to produce intelligence. Under normal conditions, your decision-making, probably at best, is something like 70% information and 30% guessing. And during a time of crisis, that's going to invert. And it's going to be 30% information, if you're lucky, and 70% guessing, which is a massive liability when you're trying to make decisions about your family's safety and security. Having information flows set up, understanding what to do, and in the order in which to do it, in order to produce intelligence and maintain situational awareness on the local security environment, is an imperative for you. I'm going to show you how to do that. Coming up next Thursday, it's a week from tomorrow, a free training webinar building a local intel cell. Head over to forwardobserver.com/intel-cell. That's intel-cell to go and register. And I look forward to doing that. It's completely free, by the way, doing that. And someone asked me yesterday why I'm doing this. Because I want to win, and that means that you have to win. And so I want to do what I can and help you prepare. Because bug out bags and freeze-dried food, it's going to get you into tomorrow, does not win the conflict. It does not win the emergency. That's just sustainment stuff. And if you want to drive operations, you've got to have intelligence. So next Thursday. All right, with that, coming up over on the early warning briefing for members only, we're going to talk about some more stuff about the shutdown, talk about these new troop announcements, I guess as National Guard deployments to Illinois, Louisiana, Missouri, and Tennessee, and some other things as well. That's correct, Ben. LARPing will not win the day. Running around in a woods with your friends and your AR-15s is just not a realistic scenario, folks. Hate to tell you that. Maybe we even talk about some realistic scenarios. All right, with that, we appreciate your support. Head over to forwardobserver.com/trial. Start a free 7-day trial to your early warning membership and get the rest of the brief, and also get our emailed brief and posted, and access to our intelligence platform as well. All right, with that, we appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. And Jared, if you would please take us over, and early warning folks, please stand by.